Hey, this is Jamey from Stonemaier Games coming to you on Sunday night, which is much later than I usually film a Sunday sit-down video, but it's still technically Sunday, and there's a reason for it, which is that I was at Geekway Mini, a convention here in St. Louis for the past couple days. It's the kind of the smaller version of a bigger convention called Geekway to the West, which happens in May. It attracts about 3,500 people, usually 3,000 or 3,500. And they also have, the last few years, they've had a smaller convention, also in St. Louis, for about 400 people that I was lucky enough to get tickets to. And so on Friday, Saturday, and half of today, I was playing games there. My goal at these conventions, this is my favorite type of convention, where I just go and play a lot of games, new to me games ideally, with new to me people, or a variety of people. I like to, I guess in a way, it's a little bit of networking. It's a little bit of me learning from other games as a designer. And I just like playing games with a lot of different people and having that time with new people. And also playing games with some friends. Anyway, that's enough context. The video today is about the 10 games that I played at Geekway Mini. 9 of them were new to me, and one of them was not, but just because I like top 10 list, I am including that one on the list. And that one's a little bit of a cheat. I'll go with it first. It is Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig, which is a game that I was involved with and I published through my company, Stonemaier Games. Because one of the things I do with these little conventions is, or really this convention, Geekway, is I try to be very welcoming for people who are trying my games, and I put a lot of games in the play and win section of these conventions. So throughout the whole convention, when I had free time, I was just walking around, just checking in with people who were playing our games and seeing if they had any rules questions or needed any help. And there was a couple who was setting up Between Two Castles, and I asked, hey, do you need some help? I could tell they were learning the rules. I said, do you want some help playing this or learning it? And so I helped them, and then I ended up playing with them because they didn't have a third player at the time. The person was stuck in traffic. So we played a wonderful 3-player game of Between Two Castles and Mad King Ludwig, and I had a great time doing that. Wingspan was also there. I put a few copies of Wingspan in the play and win because this is, my hometown convention, and it was neat to see a lot of people playing that. It was all over the place. So that's one of the 10 games. This isn't a top 10 list. I'll mention these pretty much. I'll go in the order that I played them. So the very first game I played when I walked into the convention was Gugong. And in today's video, I actually don't actually know where this is going to go. This is a Sunday sit down, so I'm going to talk a little bit about mechanisms, a little bit about my first impressions, stuff like that. So Gugong, I've been interested in a long time because of the core mechanism, which is a gift exchange mechanism. Basically, you have cards in your hand, and when you want to take an action, there are also cards on the board, one card associated with each action. And if I want to take an action, I have to take a card from my hand, and I have to put it on the board where there is a card on the board, and I pick up the card that was on the board on that action, and I discard it. It goes into my personal discard pile, and the next round, I get that card in hand and get to use it. These cards are numbered 1 through 9, with 9 being the highest, and 1 being the lowest, obviously. And ideally, when you play a card, it needs to be higher than the card that's there. You're essentially bribing the person who's running that area of the board, I think it's China, to use that action. I love that bribing mechanism. That's what made me really, really intrigued by this game. And I wasn't disappointed at all by that mechanism. It was really, really clever. Just a brilliantly done mechanism, and it's inspired by the theme of a certain time in China where bribing was outlawed, but people circumvented that rule by giving gifts instead, gifts that were not equal in value. So I love that. I love that the mechanism was inspired by the theme. I also want to mention the production quality was very, very nice. It was really, really nice. It was a Kickstarter game, and in pretty much every place that I could see, they included the nicest possible version of the corresponding component. There were a few things that stood out were these really nice wooden tokens that were not only silkscreen printed, but also kind of lacquered over. They had a nice finish to them, this nice glossy finish that was really nice. There were also, inside, you've probably seen the dual-layered player mats. They had little tokens, little tiles in this game that were dual-layered that I thought was really neat because you needed to fit a certain number of workers in them. That was really cool. What was the other component? There was kind of a double worker that was a wooden token that was twice as big as a normal worker. And what was the other thing? There was some other, I like the gold on the box. There was one other thing that I'm forgetting here. But all in all, it was a very, very nice production of the game. I was really impressed by that. That's Gugong. I'll put these names down in the comments in case you forget what I'm talking about. The next game I played was Carpe Diem, the latest Stefan Feld game. And Carpe Diem was really interesting. It's a tile placement game, and I really like the drafting mechanism. It's a public draft where it looks like a rondel at first, 7 different areas that have randomly assorted tiles. And at first it looks like a rondel, but what you're actually doing is taking your worker starts on one of the tile groups, and you're moving it in one of 2 different spots. So there's like a line on there that shows that you can go to 2 different spots on the board to pick up one of the tiles from those spots. And I thought that was really clever. I love when games take a bunch of choices and help you narrow down to just a few choices so that you're not overwhelmed. And this game does that really, really well. But it also lets you plan ahead a little bit. So you might see, okay, I really want to get these 2 tiles, and so I need to take this branch. So on my next turn, I can go down here to get this specific tile. That was really, really, really cool. As has been said a lot about this game, I think the art and the graphic design let down the mechanisms of the game a little bit, and unfortunately. And I noticed there was something bugging me about it, about why I didn't love it more. Because I liked a lot of the stuff going on in it. There were a lot of things that made me feel good. But I realized that there really is no progression in the game. And I love progression in games. When the things that you're doing late in the game are better than things that you're doing earlier in the game because of choices that you made. There's an accumulation of certain things, like you can accumulate certain resources over the course of the game. But there's really, you are no better at the end of the game than you were at the beginning of the game. And that, I think, is a little unfortunate. I really like progression in games. That is Carpe Diem from Stefan Feld. The next game I played was, actually, what was the next game I played? These are suddenly a little bit out of order. I can't pronounce this name. Teotihuacan. It's the beautiful, not Aztec theme, it might be Aztec themed game from the makers of Seoung, or one of the designers of Seoung, which is one of my favorite games, and it does have some similarities to Seoung. This was a game that I was really looking forward to. It's a beautiful looking game. I love in the middle of the board that you're actually building this temple with tiles. The action selection mechanism of kind of you pick up a worker and which is a die, and you move it around the board, and the die face itself goes up. It actually reminds me of what I was originally going to do with Euphoria, where whenever you take an action, your worker gains a little bit more knowledge about the dystopia, and so you add a pip to the die. I had that going for a while until I realized that rolling dice is a lot more than adding pips to dice. But in this game, it actually becomes a lot of fun, because in this game, instead of that being a bad thing, in Euphoria it was a bad thing. If the worker got too much knowledge, it would run away. In this game, when a worker gets up to 6 pips, it ascends. And so it basically jumps back to a 1. I guess it essentially gets old and dies, or maybe there's a religious element of ascending. But you get a very powerful bonus when it ascends. So not only are higher numbered workers better as you move them around the board, but also you can get them to ascend and you get a powerful one-time bonus. That was really cool. This was actually, though, I need to play it again, but there was so much stuff going on this board. So many icons, so many tracks, some interconnected systems, that it was definitely just the heaviest game I played, and it seemed like a little bit too much. I really thought I was going to love it after my love for Seoung, and I didn't, but I want to give it another chance. So that was kind of my first impression of it, but that was a game that I know I need to try again before fully judging it, because for a heavy game like that, I feel like I need to dig in a little bit deeper before deciding if it's a game I want to continue to play. That's Teotihuacan. Again, see the comments for the correct spelling and probably pronunciation of that game. After that very heavy game, I wanted to play a light game, and so I had some time for a filler. So I played the one game I think that I actually own on this list, and that is the Shipwreck Arcana, or Arcana. This was a game that's been recommended to me by a few people who actually watched this video, including Ian Simmons and I believe some other people. Thank you for recommending this. The publisher and the designer was very kind to send me a copy to play at Geekway, and it was a wonderful cooperative filler where we are essentially deducing numbers that the players have in their hands. You draw these tiles and you have it in your hand, and then you get to give a clue to the other players about what number that is. And it's a very tight game. Like, they basically need to guess correctly almost every turn what that number is based on the clue that you gave them. So basically, let's say I draw 2 numbers. I draw a 2 and a 5. I get to put one of those numbers on a series of clues that changes throughout the game as a way of communicating to players what the number is that I have in my hand. So I might take that 2 and I might put it on a card that says, let me see if I can think of an example. It might say the number in my hand is greater than 2, which isn't a great clue. Like, I wouldn't choose that clue if I could. But so that, because if I did that, it would make the players think that it could be a 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7. So that doesn't really narrow it down all that much. But those are the types of clues. And they do a little bit better job than that example of helping you narrow it down. Also, once you, all those clue cards can be used only a certain number of times. And once you've used them, they fade away, which means that you flip them over, which normally in a game would be a bad thing. Like, you're getting rid of this helpful clue card. But in this game, it's really good because the backside of these cards are different powerful bonuses. Like, one of the ones that we used a couple times was before the other players make a guess as to what your number is, they can say, okay, we want to guess twice instead. And if they do that, they have to discard the card that says guess twice. But it gives them 2 guesses. So if you're able to say narrow a certain number down to 2 numbers, then they can get it for sure if they use one of those cards. I will show you more in a video soon, and this is the one game on this list that I actually own. So I'll show you a little bit more about that, but it's a really cool cooperative deduction filler game that's really tight. I like how tight it is. Like, there's really no room for error at all in this game. So you need to be really clever in the clues that you give, and the other players need to be clever in the clues that they're guessing. And it's fully cooperative. That's the Shipwreck Arcana. The next one that I played, I wanted to play this game. Some friends had Cat Lady, and we've been talking about playing Cat Lady for a while, which is another much less brain-burning game than Teotihuacan, which was nice after playing it. And Cat Lady is kind of it's a public drafting game where you're selecting either a row or a column of 3 cards that are cat-related. Like, they're cat costumes, they're cats that want to be fed, they're food to feed those cats, and there are some other special abilities. It actually felt a lot like Sushi Go, but with cats. And instead of drafting, it's this 9 cards on the table, 3x3 grid, where you're choosing 1 row or 1 column of cards. And I think my favorite mechanism in this game is going to be that when you choose that row or column of cards, you put this big cat token next to it to show that you picked it. You take all those cards, and then you put out 3 new cards, and the cat token communicates to the other players. It says, you can't choose these cards right now. You need to choose something else. So there's this nice passive player interaction of preventing other players from taking the newly placed out cards. And it just kind of gets in the way of other players. It partially gets in the way of what other players want to do. It makes them add a little variety to the game. Real simple game, but nice set collection stuff going on. It was a great game to just sit down and enjoy and relax. And the cats are really cute. They have great names. My favorite name, I think, was Chairman Meow, which is a great name for a cat. That is Cat Lady. The next game I played, what was the next game? I think right after that, I played the Quacks of Quedlinberg. I might be getting a little bit out of order here, but I think that was it. We played the Quacks of Quedlinberg, which was it's a bag building push your luck game that I was a little hesitant about, but it ended up being one of my favorite games of the convention because I found that I actually really enjoy push your luck, and I do love bag building. You're basically filling this bag full of these potion tokens. You're pulling them out of the bag, and there's a certain type of token that will eventually make you bust if the numbers on those tokens add up to more than 7. Over the course of the game, you're also, based on like how far it's a little hard to show, but there's a track that you're advancing on with these tokens as you're pulling them simultaneously out of the bag. I love the simultaneous aspect. And where you end up on that track at the end of the round, whether or not you bust, you'll get points or money or both if you don't bust. And you can spend that money to get more tokens that different colors of tokens that don't contribute to the possibility of you busting. So you're diluting your bag with more and more better tokens over the course of the game. Your engine's getting better and better, but there still is that push your luck element. And that was really, really cool because there are these wonderful moments in the game where you're just hoping to push a little bit further to maybe be the furthest along on the track that round, or to get up to a ruby, or to just get a little further, to get a little bit more money, a little bit more points. The track is designed really well to incentivize you to keep going a little bit further. and you can feel around in your bag and you're like, okay, I've got 3 tokens in there. I'm pretty sure one of them is a token that I can't draw, but 2 of the other ones are good. So what are the odds? Obviously, you know the odds. 2 and 3 are your odds of having something good. And you pull out that token, and pretty much every time I did this, I busted. But there were a few times where I didn't, and that was a really fun moment when that didn't happen. So really, really clever game. I really, really admire what they did with that, and I look forward to talking that on an upcoming video and playing that one more often. That's the Quacks of Quedlinberg, I believe, or Quedlinberg. You'll again see the correct spelling in the comments. And then the game that I might have played before or after this was Treasure Island. I don't know if you follow Shut Up and Sit Down. They just did a great video about it the other day, so I was a little extra curious about playing this game. It's also published by one of the companies that we work with, Matago, in France. And it's a competitive treasure hunt game, essentially, where one of the players plays Long John Silver, and he has buried a treasure somewhere on an island, and the other players are interrogating him to find out where that treasure is. And all the players have these very basic abilities that they can use to find the treasure. They can search in like a little circle. They can move around. They can look in a bigger circle. And they have special abilities, too, that let them learn about big chunks of the board. And over the course of the game also, Long John Silver is giving public clues to the players every now and then during this interrogation where he's saying the treasure is not here, the treasure is here, but he can lie sometimes, he cannot lie. And that was Shut Up and Sit Down, one of their favorite things. I don't know if I liked it. That he could lie. I liked it thematically, but it was a little frustrating as a player because of one of the coolest things about the game, which is that the map is huge and the treasure is just a little dot on that map somewhere, and it is anywhere that Long John Silver wants it to be at the beginning of the game. So he buries it anywhere on the map at the beginning of the game. There are a few restrictions, like there are some blocked off areas where he can't build it. He can't put it like out in the ocean, but in all the eligible areas, he can put it anywhere, which is awesome. I love that. I mean, I don't think I've ever played it felt a little bit like a hidden movement game where there was that much space on the map where the thing that you're trying to find may have been. And it really felt like a buried treasure. Ended up in our game, he buried it like in this little tiny cabin off on a little island on the corner of the board that I walked right by and totally missed it. But I love how precise and small that treasure is. It really felt very thematic where it was. And it also made it feel really good when we could use special abilities to block off the areas. And that's why, or to kind of cancel out certain areas. And I forgot to mention one of the coolest things. You are writing on this board. You're writing on a lot of components in this game using dry erase markers. So you're crossing off giant sections of the board. You're crossing off your little dry erase mat. And again, all this adds up to me really not liking that bluffing mechanism all that much, because it's really difficult late in the game. If you've been crossing off stuff, or not crossing it off, it's really difficult late in the game to look at your little map or the big map and differentiate between the areas that were maybe a bluff and the areas that were definitely not a bluff, because there are certain times that Long John Silver couldn't have been bluffing. So there's a little iffy on that one aspect of the game. I understand why it's in the game, but the rest of it felt truly like a treasure hunt. And it was really neat how, even though we were competing against one another, we also just didn't want Long John Silver to win. This wasn't something the game told us. It was just something that we started to talk about a little bit, where we started to collaborate as the game went on. And someone ended up finding it, and it felt good to have Liz find it rather than Long John Silver, who had broken out of prison at that point and was racing to get to his treasure. Really, really cool game, Treasure Island. I genuinely look forward to playing this one again. Let's see, I think that's all the games that I got through on Saturday. That comes to today, where I played 2 games. One, a much older game called Snow Tales, which has a delightfully written rule book, which I know because we learned as we went, which is one of the great things about these little conventions, where we basically you can pick a game from the library or the play-in win. You can sit down and just learn the rules, because there's plenty of time to sit down and do that. And Snow Tales is a fairly easy-to-learn rule book. We did miss a few things, but we figured it out. It is a racing game where you are racing using dog bobsleds. I forget the official term for this. Dog-driven bobsleds. Where there are 2 dogs on your bobsled, leading your bobsled. Is bobsled even the right word? That's such a weird word. Bobsled? Sled? And you're steering those dogs down through a course. We chose one of the more difficult courses, really not knowing that because we couldn't fit the basic course on our table because it takes up a fair amount of room. And it feels, even though it's not deck building, it feels a little bit like deck building in that you are shuffling a deck of cards, drawing up to a certain hand, using some cards to steer your dogs through the course, and then drawing back up to 5 cards. Lots of cool stuff in this game. And the one thing that I keep thinking more about is this wonderfully thematic mechanism of your sled has 2 dogs, right? And the cards that you're playing are numbers 1 through 5. And if you have, say, the same number on your dog sled, so say I have a 5 and a 3, and I play a 3 card on top of the 5 so that I have 2 3s, that means the sled is going to go straight because those cards are even. But if either of those cards is less than the other one, so if I had that 5 and the 3, then it means that my 5 dog, the one on the left, is going to steer me a little bit to the left because he's more powerful at the time. He's steering the sled to the left. It felt perfectly thematic and led to some really interesting decisions in the game where we were trying to both use dogs strategically, use the numbers strategically to avoid obstacles, of which there are plenty, including the other racers. But at the same time, you're also trying to, because that dog is going to pull you no matter whether or not you want him to pull you, you need to kind of manage that. So at the right time, you need to drift to the right or to the left. Really cool mechanism. Also, one thing I might talk about in my video about it is the break mechanism, which is that in addition to playing a card on one of those top 2 slots, those dogs, you can discard a card to change the power of your break. Which early on in the game I thought, okay, I'll be clever. I'll play a 1 there. I'll discard a 1 to make my break 1. Because you, like in that example I gave before, you have a 5 and a 3 dog, and then if my break is 1, my speed for that turn is 5 plus 3 minus 1. So my speed would be 7, which means that I must move 7 spaces with a drift of 2 somewhere in there because 5 is greater than 3. So that seemed like a winning combination, right? To move 7 spaces instead of just a few. But as I learned in this game, it's actually really important sometimes to not move so fast and to really brake hard so that you can navigate through these tight passages. Because on your turn, the one thing you can't do is weave. With that drift system, you can either go left, you can go right, or you can go straight. You can't go left and right in the same turn, which makes for some very difficult challenges throughout the game, especially when you're going through some forests. But I really like that there's a real reason to have your break be quite a high number at certain times in the game, and you're not just trying to go as fast and far as possible every turn. Really, really cool game, Snowtails. I will say it took us, on the box that said 45 minutes, and granted we were learning as we went, and we played a harder course than we thought, and we started out with 5 players, we lost 1, went down to 4, but the game did take us 2.5 hours. So that was considerably longer than we thought it was going to be. And maybe we missed something. Maybe in the rules it said, hey, this course does last a lot longer than normal courses. Maybe I missed that. The last game that I played, the very last game of the convention, is Space Base, which I've heard some reviewers talk about, and I was very curious about playing it. I heard people say that it was like Machi Koro, but better. I enjoy Machi Koro, but so I wanted to try Space Base. And in Space Base, basically the core thing that happens in it is that you start out with every number in the game, 1 through 12. You're rolling 2 dice. Those dice are determining what you get on your turn, a core ability that you're getting on your current turn from. So say I roll a 2 and a 3 on my turn. I can either get the 2 ability from the card that I have associated with the number 2 and the 3 ability, the card that's associated with the number 3, or I can add those together and get the 5 ability. And also other players get those abilities as well if they have flipped cards associated with either those 2 and 3, or 5. I'll have to show a graphic about this in the video because it's a really, really cool mechanism, the flipping card mechanism. Basically, say I have 1 card that triggers off of 6, and you only ever have 1 card that triggers off of what you roll at any given time. So you start off with all those cards. Say I have one that if I roll a 6, I have a card that gives me a bonus. If I buy another card for 6, I take the card that I have, I flip it over, and I slide it onto my player mat, exposing just the top part, and I put the new 6 card down on my player mat. The new 6 is the one that I trigger if I rolled the die. The old 6 that flipped has a bonus on it that triggers if someone else rolls a 6. And if I choose the 6 instead of, say a 3 and a 3 rolls, if I choose the 6 instead of the 3 and the 3. So basically, you're improving your engine of what you get when other players roll their dice. And one thing that I didn't fully get until near the end of the game about how clever this was that it means that even if you aren't particularly interested in some of the abilities that are available for the dice, like the core ability of, like, say, the 8. There are a few 8 cards that I passed over because I was like, I don't really want that ability. I don't understand it. I'm learning the game right now. I want something a little more simple. But it's so important to get those flipped cards up so that you are gaining stuff when other players roll the dice, that even if you don't care about the core ability, especially in a game with 5 players, it's still great to flip those cards over so that you're getting a benefit when other players are rolling their dice. And that's something I didn't realize until late, and I really, really enjoyed that aspect of the game and would want to play again as a result of that. That's Space Base. I'm going to have to think a little bit more about that game because there was a lot going on, and it was the most recent one that I played. The only downside that I'll say about the game is that there are a lot of cards to choose from. And the numbers are pretty small on them, and they're right next to each other, so they're lined up in such a way that, like, the cost of the card is on the upper left of the card, and the dice number that it's associated with is in the upper, also in the upper right, so upper left, upper right. But then you put another card right next to it, and so those two numbers are really close to each other. And so it's just a lot of numbers to look at. There are 18 cards on the table that you can buy at any time if you can afford them, and there's 2 numbers on each of those cards. There are 36 numbers, many of them right next to each other, which made it a little hard to see. So I kind of wish they had maybe put one number in the bottom left or something, but based on the structure of the cards, I don't think that would work. It was just it felt like information overload, and I wish there was a little bit easier way of helping me focus on different numbers in the game, maybe a different way of organizing them or something, which maybe we could do the next time we play. But overall, I had a lot of fun with Space Base. That's it. Those are the 10 games: Gugong, Carpe Diem, Cat Lady, Teotihuacan, Treasure Island, Quacks of Quedlinberg, the Shipwreck Arcana, Space Base, Snowtails, and Between Two Castles of Madkin Ludwig, the one game of mine, or ours, that I played. I'd love to hear your thoughts on these games. I'm going to do probably more detailed videos in the coming weeks on my favorite game mechanism series, but I just wanted to give some quick first impressions and talk about my thoughts about these games and share what I think my favorite mechanism may be, but we'll see after I think about it a little bit more. But if you have any thoughts about any of these games, I'd love to hear your impressions of them, or if you attended Geekway Mini and want to share your thoughts on the games that you played there, I'd love to hear about that in the comments as well. That's it for this week's Sunday Sit Down, and I will see you on Tuesday with a favorite game mechanism video. Take care.